Welcome to the Lean Out Your Business podcast, a show dedicated to helping entrepreneurs accelerate business growth and simplify success. I'm your host, Crista Grasso, and I've been working with businesses for more than 2 decades to help them lean out and optimize what's working while eliminating anything that's not adding value. So if you are ready to get more time back in your day, more profit in your business, and to do business differently, growing and scaling on your terms, let's dive into today's episode. Hello, and welcome to another episode of the Lean Out Your Business podcast. Today, I am so excited to have Nikki Rausch with me, and we are going to be talking about relationship selling, which I can't wait to dive into, and how you can leverage that to increase your revenue this year. So let me tell you a little bit about Nikki, and then we are going to dive into things. Nikki is the CEO of Sales Maven, and she has the unique ability to transform the misunderstood process of selling. She has 25 plus years of a selling experience with entrepreneurs and small business owners who now hire Nikki to show them how to sell successfully and authentically. And we're going to talk a little bit about authentic sales today. Nikki's written 3 books, all available on Amazon, and she has a podcast called Sales Maven, which you can find on your favorite podcast platform. So Nikki, welcome. I'm so excited to have you with us today.
Well, thank you for having me. I am thrilled to be here with you.
Yeah, it's fun how we end up connecting, right? I always love how we come together, and we have, what is this, like 2 degrees of separation from a couple different directions. So it's always fun coming together, but you guys are in for a real treat today. I love this conversation and can't wait to dive in. So the first thing that I want to talk about is I feel like selling is something that people have such mixed feelings about. There's some people who love it. Like there's some unicorns out there, probably like you, who really love selling. There's other people who are like, well, I do it because I have to, because, I have a business. But there's a lot of people who really dread it, or it even gives them anxiety when they think about going into a sales conversation and selling. So for those people who are not on the I love sales camp, how can they really go into sales conversations with confidence and feeling like they know how to actually get good results and get those results in a really authentic way?
I love this question. I feel like it's a big question. My short version of the answer is going to be 1, sales isn't something you do to somebody. And if you're somebody who hates sales, it's probably because you've been on the receiving end of having it done to you and not with you. So sales actually is something you do with people. And when you start approaching a sales conversation with this with attitude, this is a collaborative experience. This is, not one person in the conversation holds more power than the other. There's a balance of power. And I teach a structure to a sales conversation. I call it the selling staircase. And the idea is when you know where you are in the conversation, it's easier to know what to do next. So instead of trying to think, 10, 20 steps ahead, or, oh my gosh, I have to memorize this script or any of that. Nope, you don't need to do any of that. You just need to know where are we in the conversation and what's the next logical step in that conversation. And you just focus on that. So it takes the stressor off of like, oh my gosh, am I supposed to be selling right now? Or should I push? Like, did they give me an objection? What about, and then you're all up in your head and you're not really focused on the conversation. You're not focused on the other person. And so that goes back to relationship selling is a with conversation. It's not talking at people. It's not trying to convince anybody of anything or change their mind. It's just a collaborative experience.
I love that so much. And that feels so much more inviting. It feels so much more natural. And you're right. I feel like so much of what we're taught about selling does put you in your head instead of in the conversation, because it is very much you're like listening for different things. And it does kind of put you in a different perspective. So how can somebody shift into more of that relationship type of selling approach in that perspective instead?
Well, the first thing to do is really focus on building rapport with the other person. So instead of like going into this conversation with, I'm going to sell this person or whatever, go into it and think, how can I build rapport? How can I ensure that regardless of the outcome of our conversation, the person feels better than when I left them, right? Or than when I showed up. Like they feel better. At least they had a nice conversation with a good person who is legitimately caring about them in some way. So that means stop treating people like most people who are afraid of sales don't do this, but you don't need to treat anybody like a wallet or like a dollar sign walking around on their head. It's like, no, this is a real person. And I'm just here to show up in conversation and to show up with a curiosity. Like, does this person have a problem or a need or a want? And do I have a solution that might help solve a problem, a need, or a want? And if so, in reality, and I mean this in the kindest, most loving way, it's your responsibility to put an offer in front of this person to solve their problem, need, or want. It's not to create the problem. It's not to like convince them they have a problem. It's to understand, do they have a problem? And do you have a solution? And then to put it in front of them in an invitation way that they can either accept the invitation or they can decline the invitation. And either way, the relationship is still intact.
There is so much gold in what you just said. I absolutely love that approach. And it feels so much better. It should be an invitation, and it should only be an invitation if it's the right fit. So I absolutely love that. So that takes me to, what are some selling mistakes that people make?
Well, okay. So I mentioned that I teach a 5-step process to the sales conversation. I call it the selling staircase because your job is to move from step to step to step. And the steps, I'm just going to give them to you really quickly, is the first step is introduction. It's your job to make a powerful first impression. That's what happens in the introduction step. Step 2 is create curiosity. That's to have somebody want to lean in, want to hear them a little bit more, have somebody ask questions. Step 3 is discovery. Some people call that consultation. And your job there is to really get a better sense of what's going on for this person. Do they have a problem, a need, or a want? And then step 4 is proposal. And that's to lay out a really clear next step for somebody. That's where you're issuing that invitation as to work together. And then step 5 is the close. And this is a really important piece where you actually do issue some close language. And so back to your question, the biggest mistake, or some of the mistakes that people make in a sales conversation, is they try to skip steps. They meet you and they go right into sales mode. But actually, there's no selling in the first 3 steps. You're not selling during introduction. You're not selling during creating curiosity, and you're not selling during the discovery process. Now, you might sell in that conversation, but not until you're at step 4, which is proposal. So these steps can happen in one conversation, or they can happen over a period of time, depending on kind of where the person is and, if they're ready to move forward, and if they understand they have a problem or need or a want, all of that good stuff. So that's the biggest mistake, is people try to skip steps. And when you skip steps, you leave the prospect feeling either confused or sometimes overwhelmed or frankly irritated because you never really do this really important piece, which in selling I teach. It's very important to ask permission. And if you don't have permission to sell to somebody, you should not be selling to them. So all those emails that we get in our inbox every day where somebody's like, hey, I just checked out your Instagram account. It could be so much better. And here's how we would make it better. And here's why you should hire us. Well, I'm never going to hire that person because they never had my permission to sell to me. They should have got my permission before they launched into their sales pitch. And the same is true in a live conversation. If you don't have permission from somebody, you really shouldn't be selling. And just to like bring it to light here, a way to ask permission is to say to somebody, based on what you've shared with me, I have some thoughts of some ways we might work together. Would you be interested to hear more about those? That's a permission question. And if you can ask that and somebody says, yeah, tell me more. Well, great. Now you can actually lay out an offer. Now you're in kind of sales mode. You're walking through like the ways to work together, what you would recommend for them, whatever that is. But if you're selling before you ever get somebody's permission, you're probably having them go into shutdown mode. They're like, never going to buy from this person. I don't like her style.
Yeah, so true. And it's fascinating to me. Why do you think we still get those emails all the time? Do they actually work? Because I probably get, I don't know, dozens of them every single day with people wanting to fix everything from my SEO to my Instagram to everything under the sun.
I'm not convinced that they work. I think it's a little bit of like a shotgun approach to sales. I don't believe in a shotgun approach to sales. It's like, I'm just going to spit out, as much garbage as I can into the world and see if anything sticks and anything comes back to me. I think it's a huge waste of time and energy. I also think it just annoys people. So I don't think that they work. I really don't. Now, you might be saying, well, if they don't work, then why are people doing them? It's because somebody somewhere taught them this is what you're supposed to do. But I'll guarantee you the people who taught them that this is what you're supposed to do are probably people selling lists. That's how they make their money. Hey, I'm going to sell you this list of 10,000 people, and you can send an email immediately to 10,000 people, and you're probably going to get some buyers. I don't know. I come from a corporate background. I've worked for companies that bought lists before. 9 out of 10 times, and this was years ago where list service weren't as prevalent as they are today, but most of them are garbage. Because I'll tell you that most of the ones that I get, that obviously somebody has put my email on a list, it's not even relevant to me. I was never, ever going to be a client to them. So they just paid money to get my email address, and they have zero chance of earning my business. One, because I don't have a problem that they can solve. And two, I don't buy from people who don't have my permission to sell to me. I'm really like kind of a stickler about it.
No, I love that because I think that's true for so many of us. And I think that that's like an obvious extreme. I don't think any of us listening, anyone listening is either going to take that approach or probably ever going to open up their wallet and buy from somebody who does that. But I think there's subtler versions of that we see all the time on social media, on emails that we get in our inbox from people whose lists we did subscribe to. And there is no real permission. It is very much you have a problem and I can solve that problem, but you've never actually confirmed with the person that they had a problem, they realize, or are interested in solving the problem, or want to work with you to solve the problem. So what do you see there that the mistakes that entrepreneurs make, that maybe they aren't asking for that permission or being a little too aggressive in their sales because somebody told them that they should, but it doesn't feel right or doesn't feel authentic to them?
Yeah. I love this too. So I can like talk about this all day long because I love this idea of selling over email. And I have a list, right? I have an email list. I sell to my list all the time. But I'll tell you the difference is that I don't ever talk at people in my email. I talk with them. And the way I talk with them is I ask a lot of questions. So you'll never get an email from me that says, hey, I know that you have this problem. And because you have this problem, you need help. And here's a solution for you. You're going to get an email from me that says, hey, have you ever experienced this? Have you ever wanted to have a solution? If so, here's a possible solution for you. Here's where you can go with this, right? So it's going to be an invitation, or I'm going to say, hey, have you ever had this problem? Have you ever wanted a solution to it? Here is a possible solution. Would love to invite you to be a part of blah, blah, blah. So I'm going to ask questions. And the other thing in email that's different, I will say with me and with my clients, because I preach this like on my soapbox religiously, frankly, is I never send an email that says, hey, everyone, because none of us read email as a group. I don't know about you, but I don't know any of my girlfriends. We never get together for reading email parties. We never like, hey, let's all get together and read our emails. So when you talk to everyone in an email, it's super easy to ignore. You get an email from me, it's probably going to say, hey, Crista, or it's going to say, hey, Janet. It's going to have your name, the name of the person I'm sending the email to. And I'm not going to say, this is for all of you. I'm going to say, this is for you, because you're reading it as a person. I talk with you like you are a person, because you are a person and you want to be treated like a person. I do too. So when you're selling in your email list, be really aware of the language that you're using. Stop telling people, I know you need this. I know you have a problem. I know you're struggling with this, because one, it's called flipping a polarity response. I don't know about you in your life, but if somebody comes up to you who doesn't know you and they're like, girl, I know you're struggling with X, Y, and Z, you're probably more likely to be like, first of all, you don't know me. And I'm never going to admit that I'm struggling with that because you just told me something about myself and you don't have permission. So instead of telling anybody what you know about them, ask. Because if somebody came up to you and said, "Hey, Crista, have you ever struggled with such and such?" you might be more inclined to answer that question.
Yeah, it's so true. I got an email, I want to say it was maybe like 2 weeks ago, and it was like, you're setting goals wrong. And this is why you're not living the life of your dreams and you're not getting the results that you want because you don't know how to set goals. And I'm like, I teach people how to set goals for a living. I know how to set goals. I'm good. But it was just, it gave me that instant reaction when I got the email. And it just made me think, is anybody responding positively to this? Like, do they realize how that email's being taken? Because even if I was somebody who couldn't set goals to save my life, I feel like it still would have triggered me to be like, don't tell me I don't know how to set goals.
Yeah, or it feels really shaming, right? Like if you are somebody who really struggles with goal setting and somebody's like saying these things to you, none of us want to feel shamed. Like, it's kind of a thing right now on, social media. Like people love to shame each other and we love to we have the cancel culture and all of that, but nobody wants to be on the receiving end of being shamed or being a part of the cancel culture. It doesn't feel nice. And it can be really hurtful and triggering, like you said. So make sure that even if you go, well, that wasn't my intention, your intention actually matters less than what was the result. So I have a background in neurolinguistic programming, and in NLP, there's a presupposition. If you never heard that term before, by the way, it's really the study of communication, NLP, neurolinguistic programming. But there's a presupposition that says the meaning of your communication is based on the response you get. So saying like, oh, well, that wasn't my intention doesn't count. Because the person who felt pinched by if you felt pinched by what they said about the goal setting, you don't care that that wasn't their intention. That's how you took it. So therefore, that's the meaning behind it, because it really only matters what the reader thinks, not what you meant. It's how did the reader take it?
Yeah, it's so true. And, for anybody listening, just look at your emails. Listen to what Nikki has to say, because there's a lot of people teaching you to do the things that we're talking about here that you really shouldn't do. They're teaching you to tell people that they have a problem so that they recognize they have a problem and need your service. But there is clearly a better, more invitational way to do it, which, Nikki, I think you did a beautiful job of outlining.
Thank you.
And
I thought sometimes I think about it as it's like somebody comes up to you and they give you 10 paper cuts and they go, "Oh, bless your heart, you're bleeding." Yeah, I'm bleeding because you just cut me 10 times. Like, we don't need to do this. We don't need to hammer home people's pain points in order to sell to them. I just am I think society, we're kind of sick of it, but I'm really sick of it. And it just doesn't need to be that way. And this is, again, kind of back to your original question. This is why those of us who don't feel comfortable with this don't want to sell, because we don't want to paper cut people and then tell them they're bleeding. That doesn't feel good. And so then you hold yourself back from really making the impact in the world that you can make, because you think you have to sell like these people are out there preaching, which you don't. And you can be really successful showing up and caring about the person that you're in conversation with.
yeah, I mean, I couldn't love what you're saying and agree anymore. Everybody knows something I say all the time is why? Why do you have to agitate the pain? I get that somebody needs to recognize in a lot of cases that they do have a problem that you can help them solve, but you don't need to make them feel worse in the process. You really don't need to make them feel terrible. So I love all of this.
I love that that's your saying. Why do you need to agitate the pain? I feel like I want to give you a huge shout out of thank you. Thank you for preaching that, because yes, amen.
Yeah, trust me, they know they have pain. They really do. They know.
Yes. We all know. We all know we're struggling, right? We all have issues, right? We're all in this together.
So let's talk about how we can leverage this whole concept of relationship selling and everything that you've been sharing to achieve some of our revenue goals for the year. So let's say we do have those big revenue goals. We want to increase our revenue in a pretty significant way this year. And we're like, this feels so much better than what I've been told before. What would you recommend? What should somebody be thinking about?
Well, one thing you need to be thinking about is if you have any hesitation around sales and the comfort level around it. But yet, you know, that that's really the only way you're going to reach these big revenue goals is 9 out of 10 times, probably 9 out of 9 times, like really. I find that people actually aren't putting enough offers out into the marketplace. They're not giving people enough opportunities to say yes. So what I mean by this is, you know, if you are building an email list, and that is one of the ways that you intend to grow your business, which frankly is the way most of us grow our business as entrepreneurs, is we make offers to our email list. Chances are you're not making enough offers and you're not testing out different levels of offer. Because I find sometimes people get stuck in like, I'm only going to sell this really high-end thing, or I'm only going to sell this really inexpensive thing. But realistically, you got to test different levels, because I always say with your offers, you want to hit the trifecta. You got to hit the right person at the right time with the right offer, but you don't know what the right time is or what the right offer is going to be. So you need to make offers regularly so that your list, one, gets trained that there's going to be offers made to them, that they're going to have opportunities to work with you. Sometimes, and actually I had somebody tell me this years ago. I was speaking and she heard my talk, and afterwards she came up and she was like, you know, Nikki, you talk about that you've got to issue invitations. She's like, but I sell to adults. And in that moment, I like froze, because I was like, who doesn't sell to adults? Like I honestly, I was like, who is she? Did I say I sell to kids? Like in my mind, I'm like, what did I say that made her like have to tell me she sells to adults? And then she followed it up with, while I'm freaking out in the privacy of my own mind as she's saying this, she goes, I sell to adults. And if they want to buy from me, they'll let me know. And I said, oh, actually, that's not true. Most people will not make a decision to hire you unless you put an invitation in front of them. One, because in our society today, most of us have decision fatigue. Our brains are lazy. We won't make a decision if we don't have to. And the only way you're going to help people take the next step with you is by putting a decision right in front of them at the right time, where they can say yes, no, I have a question, whatever that next step is. So you got to be issuing invitations more often. That means you need to be making more offers to your list.
Yeah, it's so true. I remember one of my coaches who I've worked with in the past too. I followed her for years. I had bought one of her programs like 8 years ago, and I get her newsletter, and I think the world of her, and I would have loved to have worked with her, but it wasn't until she sent out an email saying, hey, I've got a few spots open for VIP days. Here's the dates that are available. If you want one, reply back. And I probably never would have gone to her website on my own and said, hey, does she have a VIP day? But she sent that email, and I was probably like, replied 5 seconds later, like, I want that day. I'll see you in New York City. I want that one.
Yes.
But, and I thought the world of her. I would have loved to have worked with her, but it wasn't until I got the email that said, hey, this is available, that my mind triggered with, of course, why am I not hiring her and working with her?
Yeah, it's like the right time, the right offer, you know, you're the right person. So, and back to your point, and I actually hear this all the time from people that will say like, you know, I would have hired so and so years ago had I known what she charged, but I was always afraid to ask her because she doesn't list it on her website. I'm also a big advocate of putting some pricing on your website, which usually puts people into a tailspin when I tell them this. But it's like, guess what? People are actually never even calling you or thinking about hiring you because they're afraid that the first question they have to ask you is, what do you charge? And if that's the first question they have to ask you, then it feels uncomfortable and awkward to them. And your job in the sales process is to put people at ease, make it easy for them to work with you, make it easy for them to take the next step. And if they're having to like, you know, be like a private detective to find out your pricing so they know whether or not they can hire you, or be a private detective to find out when you might have open VIP days, chances are they're not going to even ever like take the opportunity to look at that. So
Yeah. And
yeah.
I'm so happy you said that, because all of my pricing for every single offer I have, including my highest ticket offer, is on my website and always will be. And I tell people to do this all the time. It makes me crazy. And there are very, very few people that I would ever schedule a call with or even fill out an application for if I didn't see the price first. And it's not because the price would give me sticker shock. It's not because I would say, oh, that's such a good deal. It's because to me, it feels like a slimy sales tactic that you're going to make me get on the phone with you to talk before you'll tell me how much something costs. I don't know if other people feel that way, but that's kind of my reaction to it. And I never want to do that. So my pricing is 100% visible at all points in time. And I always recommend to people that they do the same. Do you find people have that same reaction?
Yeah, people tell me all the time. I had this one time we were having a fairly heated discussion in one of my master classes because I was talking about how important it is to have pricing. And then there was the people who are like, yeah, but I don't put pricing because, I went through this training with so-and-so and they said, you want to get on the phone with people, blah, 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 blah. And then there was one person in my room that she kind of raised her hand, but in that, I'm not sure if I should speak up kind of way. And then she was like, I just want to say that I will never call people who don't have pricing on their website because I feel cheap by having to ask that question. And I was like, that's not the impression you ever want to make with anybody, right? If you put the client or the prospect in a position where they feel less than because they're having to ask for, frankly, information that should be readily available, then you're doing them a disservice. And I actually had a sales conversation. This woman came highly recommended to me from a trusted colleague. I needed her service and I was going to hire her. She didn't have any pricing on her website, but again, she came highly recommended. And we got into the conversation and I said at one point, I'm ready to move forward. I just need to understand the pricing structure behind this. And she said, Nikki, we'll talk about that later. But first we need to talk about these other things. And that was it. She lost my business because I was like, you don't get to tell me when I ask you a direct question that you're not going to tell me your price, because now that does feel slimy. And I know somebody somewhere taught her this technique, but she lost herself a $10,000 client. I would have paid her $10,000, which is what her price was, to do this thing. And I was ready to buy right then. But she acted like her pricing she needed to convince me before she could reveal her pricing. But I was already in. I just wanted to know the price so that I could decide, am I putting it on my credit card? Am I sending her, what am I doing here? So we can move forward. So yeah, this whole idea of trying to play your cards close to your vest, I'm not going to reveal my price, that does such a disservice to you and to the relationship with the prospect. I can guarantee you're damaging relationships by doing that.
I feel like we could talk for days about all of the things. Yes, yes, yes to all of that. And I have heard people teach exactly what that woman did. When somebody asks about pricing, you never answer. What you do is, and so I'm sure she was very highly trained on how to go through that sales process and not even realizing how much money she's leaving on the table.
Yeah, it was such a mistake. It was really unfortunate. One, it was unfortunate for her, right? Because she lost a client. But for me also as the client, because I missed out on what she could have provided for my business at that particular time. So yeah. And the other thing is, there's a lot of other solutions out there. There's a million other sales coaches that you can go hire. But you ask me a question, I'm going to give you a very direct answer, and not in a harsh way. And when I answer my question about pricing, it doesn't mean that I'm just going to say the price and leave it there. I might say the price and then I'll explain what you get for that price. I'm going to establish value behind it. But you ask me a direct question, I'm going to give you a direct answer, because otherwise it breaks down safety. It breaks down trust.
So tell people, if they are resonating with this conversation as much as I am, tell them where they can find out more about you and what do you have coming up? What's exciting that's coming up in your world?
Thank you so much. So the easiest way for us to connect, I'm going to wrap it around a gift for your audience. So I have an ebook called Closing the Sale, and it kind of talks through those last couple steps. You can get that by going to Your Sales Maven, and it's maven.com/lean out. So all one word, lean out. So this is for your listeners. So then we'll be connected. That's the easiest way for us to connect. You can also find my own, I have my own podcast called Sales Maven. So if you're listen to podcasts, which obviously you do, that's another way. And what I have coming up is a masterclass. So I teach masterclasses a few times a year, and it's a deep dive on a particular topic around sales. So my next masterclass is coming up soon. And it's the kind of class where you go in, I teach a concept, you get to work on the concept during the course, get to ask questions, get feedback, get coaching from me. And so that when you walk away, you're prepared to implement it into your business.
I love that. And so now for the question that I cannot wait to hear your answer for, which is, I ask this for everyone, is how do you work smarter, not harder, and keep things lean in your business?
I feel like I want to have two answers, but I'm going to say the real answer is that I have a team and that I delegate tasks that I don't need to touch, that my team can do, so that I can show up and be fully present with my clients when I work with them and be strategic about the focus and direction of my business. So I'm going to say delegating and having a team to support the efforts of my business is how I think I work smarter, not harder.
I love it. Absolutely critical. I always say you need strategy, planning, systems, and team. Those are like the key items to really have a lean, successful business. I love it. Okay, so any final tips on how people can really increase their sales and feel really authentic in the way that they're going about it?
The number one tip is to issue more invitations. Be willing to ask people, hey, is there ever an opportunity that we might work together? Like, just even asking that might open a door for you to have a conversation with your ideal client.
I love it. Nikki, thank you so much. I already know I want to have you back on the podcast because I really do think we could just talk for days. I hope you all absolutely loved this episode and got a ton of value out of it. We'll be back again next week. Nikki, thank you so much for being here.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you for joining me for another episode of the Lean Out Your Business podcast. I hope you got a lot of value and actionable insights from today's show and would love if you take a moment to leave us a review. If you have any questions on today's episode or on how to lean out your business, join us over in our private Facebook community where every week we do live training and Q&A, and I'd love to have you be part of the conversation. Head to leanoutmethod.com/group to join us. And before you go, be sure to subscribe to the show so you're the first to know when we release a new episode. We'll see you next week.